focus on the hand as it's doing things. And you see, the wife made this jello for dessert, but Turbine can't eat, so she's gonna throw it away, and she's gonna flush it. So flush the dessert. But what happens is that when I'm working with an understanding that those are systems with variable duration, as we said, I'm looking at all frames of an event in the same time, and whether it's going to be happening at 2 frames per second or 4 frames per second is not as important when you simply have all parts of the anatomy of that event. And then you can loop it or whatever, and the anatomy of that event is there. In the case of a film like this one, you simply cut the loop at the end of the first cycle, and then you go to the next system. But it's more or less the same logic, where your event, your time is a spatial, all-in-one concept. But sometimes you don't really, because like the parts are, the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. When you're working on this film and you start thinking of the emotional value of pausing and accelerating the from one shot to the other and giving a bit of anticipation, those are things that you can't, sometimes it is a problem to look at the whole film and see whether or not it's pertinent to pause it a bit more or less at a certain time because of an overwhelming sequence of things that just happened before, and you weren't thinking in this way when you're doing this one closed system, and stop me if it doesn't make any sense. But basically, sometimes you need to pause and wait for just a few seconds. But in cases like this one, I'm looking at a system, and this is what happens in this system. Okay, it falls in the toilet bowl. Okay, Blop. But what I needed was to have this jello for a moment, because it is a lamentable shot. She was trying to make this work. They hadn't seen it was supposed to work, but then it just all fell apart because he's not human anymore. So this is supposed to be a moment where she is disillusioned, right? So I needed to have a very something that is dragging itself, falling by very slowly and in a pathetic way. But the problem here is that what I realized that I needed is for it to go like this, okay, and then it falls, okay. But I had already established in my system that this thing would fall in a specific way, the whipped cream and the cherry. I made decisions on how exactly this would react before realizing that I need to create anticipation when looking at the whole. So when I'm cutting it on my Premiere workspace and I pause here for a second, the cherry is just suspended in space, and it doesn't make any sense. I have to have this animation happen. Okay, so I'm just looking at the whipped cream and the cherry. All of this should have happened when the jello was still here. Is that what I mean? But I've already plugged it all into one system because of the holistic approach. So it's almost like it's helping me, but it's also a handicap sometimes because of cases like this one. So at this moment, it's not a priority for me to redraw it at this stage. It would be considered, for me, it would be considered a luxury to go back to this specific shot. So it's something I just work with. This shot will simply be like this instead of like this. So I've locked myself to a specific shot because of my technique. And I mean, it would have been worse if I was using a technique that's even more real instead of, I guess, digital, like sand or something, where I would really be limited to my process. So those are cases where the timing can suffer from the kind of decision, the holistic decision making that is taking place every single stage, every single frame. Another case of this is, some of them are just really nice. Like, I'm really proud of shots like this one. It's just a few. It's just a few frames.
What do you like about that? Why are you particularly proud of that?
Because it could have been so easy to, make a geometrically accurate model of this here, and kind of have it, rotate in a very normal way. But I just really felt bad about as I was doing it. My intuition was telling me this is not going to work. You need to sit down, plan what the shape looks like. And throughout the process of doing this thing, I didn't have a lot of passion doing this because I was sure it was not going to work. But then, for some reason, it worked perfectly because you had this. It was it just worked, and it was just a few shots, because you understand that this is about it starting to accelerate, and she plunges in this right away to mix the soup, and it's just a little. It's everything about it is perfect because you can feel that she's clicking, and then it starts accelerating. The shape that was passively, sculpted in its full was just a whole item. All of a sudden, start having like a complicity with regards to the soup, right? Because you can see how it's aggressively closing in right before you put it in. So it's little things like this that even this is acting, One of the most complicated shots for me was the caterpillar train, which is a character in himself, because it is the most foreign body in the whole film. It's a technique that is not really. It's still using my drawings, but I'm not really thinking the way I'm thinking for the rest of the shots. It's like a cutout approach. So I had a lot of trouble estimating my motion to make sure and you see there's things I'm not too happy about. I'm not happy that this here is overlapping. It would have been great if I had a way to have them, being limited by the metal. It is a solid, so it overlapping like this isn't really making sense, right? So this is one of the cases of problems, and as well as this. So it starts off. I can't have this go back here. I can't have this part be pulled back a bit because it wouldn't make a lot of sense. It's supposed to go forward, so I'm limited to. This has to make sense because people are gonna get lost if this here isn't locked and only goes forward. People are gonna think this is just like flying around and stuff. It has to be a specific caterpillar motion where you have two constant forces. This one here and this one here, and I'm gonna show you actually that a lot.